Hello and welcome to the two-man power trip of wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Paz. With me today, very special guest, former two-time IWGP Junior Tag Team Champion, two-time NXT World Tag Team Champion, ROH TV Champion, and three-time ROH World Tag Team Champion. He is, of course, Mr. Bobby Fish. Bobby, welcome to the two-man power trip. How you doing?
Oh, thank you, sir. Much appreciated. Doing good.
What's going on in your world? What's the latest? What are you up to?
Um, I just got married,
Oh, congrats.
so yeah, some a lot of personal life stuff going on. So kind of, I don't know. That that kind of stuff took priority. So professional has really kind of been purposely on the back burner.
Got to be life over wrestling, right? I know some people don't believe in that, but it's got to be.
It has to be. I mean, I think that there was definitely a time for me where those were switched around. And I think that some of that at times is responsible for, like, okay, well, certain successes or whatever you want to call it. But we all know how that story ends, and it's almost cliche. It's been told so many times. It's like the pro wrestler that can't put down the pills, which is another sad cliche. But I guess for me, yeah, I don't want to be a sad cliche.
Now, I know you got other stuff on the horizon, right? You guys got a podcast coming out. I guess it's called the Undisputed Podcast, but I know you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, that should be up and running sooner than later, which is the vaguest time frame a person
Yeah.
could put out into the social media sphere, I suppose. But yeah, we've been working on it, and we just got to get one in the can and get it rolling. And yeah, but we're excited about it.
Is it just you and Kyle, or is Adam Cole involved as well?
No, it's actually me and three guys that I've known most of my life, different various degrees of growing up. And God, there's one of the one of the guys that's doing it with me. We've known each other um, literally since, like, well, I don't know if we've known each other, but we were in the same room like 4 minutes after both of us being on this planet. His mother and my mother were in the same delivery room,
Whoa.
and we were born. I don't remember the exact minutes, but there were three of us, all born in the same delivery room, and we were all within minutes of each other. So this one guy, yeah, he's doing the podcast with me, and he's a radio personality in upstate New York. And yeah, I mean, we've known each other for longer than we probably should.
Sorry, I just assumed Kyle and Adam just because it's got the Undisputed Podcast. So I'm like, oh, then maybe they're a part of
Yeah,
it. I didn't even realize that they were not. Yeah.
yeah, no, but you never know. I mean, we'll bring him on there, or we'll figure something out.
What are you guys going to be talking about? Is it wrestling, not wrestling, sports, or is it like a thing of
It's
everything?
wrestling, sports, a little bit of pop culture, probably a little bit of, I don't want to say a little bit of everything, because again, that's just so vague. But we're um, we're gonna talk about life, fitness, entertainment, pro wrestling, obviously. But a bit about what the other guys got going on too. They're less in the spotlight, but like I said, one friend of mine, he's a radio personality in upstate New York. Um, the other one is a gentleman who is a baseball batting instructor, but he has recently started doing hitting clinics all over the country and has started working for a couple of pretty big companies. One is owned by Michael Jordan. I
Whoa.
want to say one, not one championship because that's an MMA league, but
Yeah.
anyway, just it'll be more about kind of just the stuff that we all have going on, and yeah,
What kind of inspired you to want to do that? I mean, it seems like every wrestler's kind of getting into the podcasting game, but it's becoming so big. There's room for everybody now, it seems like.
yeah, which I think was part of the reason why we didn't want to just do wrestling, and we're thinking maybe to be a little bit different in that we're excuse me, a bit of an eclectic bunch, between the four of us. So that was kind of the concept and the idea for it. And let it be, let it turn into what it's going to turn into, and let it be a little bit more pop culture. And, you look at a guy like Pat McAfee and Pat, who is very embellished in the pro wrestling world, but also obviously comes from professional sports world, and he's kind of got a hand in this thing and that thing. And um, I think gentlemen like Pat have opened up what the expectations are and what's possible.
It's almost like he's making wrestling cool again. You know what I mean? Like, but by being on it, talking about it, but bringing on wrestling guests and then doing his football thing too, obviously, with Hawk and everybody else involved. So it's really cool. It's a good mix he's got going on.
Yeah, yeah, it really does. It really does. I gotta applaud Pat in that regard.
Were you surprised about his wrestling ability? Because obviously, he had the match with Adam Cole, but you guys had the War Games match. Were you surprised with just
Yeah.
how kind of smooth he was and good he was? Because I know he was trained a little bit by Rip Rogers, but it's not like he had years of training.
No, not at all. And yeah, Pat, I mean, he exceeded a lot of expectations, I believe. I don't want to name names and who had the expectations or whatever, but like I know for myself, I wasn't sure what we were getting. I knew he was obviously a professional athlete, but Pat will even joke about it himself, and he'll say, "Well, yeah, but I'm a punter." But
Yeah.
Pat really, yeah, he exceeded expectations for sure.
But you never know with like other sports and coming to wrestling. Because let's say Mongo Michael, for instance, awesome football player, like maybe possibly Hall of Fame level. He's on the Chicago Bears. He's great.
Sure.
He's on the Packers, but he wasn't like the most athletic guy in wrestling, but he was athletic in football. So sometimes,
Mm,
it doesn't go translate from one sport to another. Even when Tyson Fury was in WWE not that long ago, I mean,
hmm
he did not, but he's one of the best boxers in the world, but he didn't look
Sure.
that great. So, you know what I mean? You never know.
No, it doesn't always translate because it's such a unique mix, and it's something I've commented on before, and why I think like you get a lot of people crossing over from MMA, and it doesn't always work, and like a guy like Riddle um, really crossed over very well. But then there's been others that just have not, and then there are people on the other side of that. I would throw myself into that category. Who, same with Kyle, like guys that legitimately train and have trained for years upon years. But there's got to be a certain amount of pro wrestling experience and a certain amount of legitimate technical ability and skill, and an understanding for the difference between the two and where those lines can be blurred. And I mean, I'll be honest, it's such a um, niche sort of skill set. I really don't know where else you would apply it. Maybe stunt work or something in the movies, but like to have real technical ability when it comes to martial arts, but then to be able to find that line where you're not, you're not striking to do damage, or to lessen it at least as much as it can be lessened.
It's always interesting, like, when, like, the MMA guys kind of flip, because sometimes like, Cain Velasquez, obviously before everything happened, but like,
Hmm.
it kinda wasn't working out that great. Like, a couple guys just don't mix well. People always go, "Oh, Ken Shamrock." Ken Shamrock's actually a pro wrestler that became an MMA fighter that did
Yeah,
wrestling again, so he's kinda out of the loop, but, like, some
yeah,
guys make the jump. Josh Barnett, awesome example. He made the jump, he's great. If you ever seen
yeah.
old Kevin Randleman matches, he's awesome. Like, they're
I've never seen
yeah.
Randleman do pro wrestling.
Oh, it's so funny. He's like an uncaged, he's just, like, nuts, like, he's an animal in there, he's just
Yeah,
so crazy, doing flying elbows. They've been
yeah.
putting a lot of, I think Mark Coleman might have posted it recently, a lot of
Okay.
stuff of his matches in Japan, but it was only a
Yeah,
small sample size. Like, even
yeah.
Bas Rutten tried to wrestle Don Fry, like, not great, but then you got
Sure.
great examples like Josh Barnett, and I love
Yeah.
watching some of these Randleman matches.
Barnett's great. Josh is, I mean,
Yeah.
he's and I just love listening to him talk about the two. And it's probably because he's so passionate for both. But then you also look at guys like Tom Lawler, who does really well with it. And like I had already brought up Riddle. I think, and I'm biased, but Kyle is a purple belt, I believe, in jiu-jitsu. And anybody who knows anything about jiu-jitsu knows that, like, you don't get that overnight. So he he's just really, really fantastic. But he's one of those people that has that right balance of the two. And I think that that's what you see with a guy like Tom Lawler and Josh Barnett. There's a certain understanding of the martial arts, but then also for pro wrestling. And if there's too much of the pro wrestling missing, it doesn't work out.
You think you need to be a wrestling fan? Because obviously Riddle was a big fan, Barnett's a huge fan, like, you think you need to be a fan or not really to be able to do pro wrestling?
Um, it's hard for me to say because I was a fan, so I don't really know that world of not being a fan where like you don't understand it or you don't know what you're watching. I've watched it from the time I was a kid, which was kind of the same time I started martial arts. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I can really comment on it. I think it helps definitely to be a fan, but that's the only world I know. So it's a very skewed opinion.
To me, I like the style you and Kyle O'Reilly, even Danielson to a certain degree, of putting the MMA, but obviously you guys have a background in it. Do you think that's kind of maybe where it kind of should be going, but isn't that a great direction to kind of go in to kind of mix that? Because it's like almost like it's a shoot, but you're doing real stuff
Hmm.
that looks like I mean, your kicks are, some of the best kicks in wrestling, but it looks like you're killing the guy.
Most educated feet in professional wrestling, sir.
Yeah.
But honestly, in all sincerity, I appreciate that. I put a lot of pride into the technical part of it. And I think for me, it comes from just the fact that, as a kid training in martial arts, I was always such a stickler for technique and like learning how to do it right. And I think Kyle shares the same sort of enthusiasm. And like that's where I do get a little miffed at times when it comes to pro wrestling. Like we control so many variables, so you can go out there and do literally whatever you want. Um, but I feel like this is not MMA. So in MMA, you've got to cover all the bases, check all the boxes, because if not, you're going to get exposed. If you're good at jiu-jitsu and you're good at striking, but like your wrestling isn't there, like you're never going to get anybody to the floor, or you can't dictate where the fight's going to stay. This is pro wrestling. It's not that. So you don't have to cover all the bases or check all the boxes. And I think that there's too many people that, because they can do everything, they feel like, well, then I should do everything. And it's like, no, that's where it gets boring, because let's say you got 10 guys and all 10 of them are capable of doing everything. Well, there's a portion of what you're capable of doing that you can only really pull off because it's pro wrestling. If it were competitive, some of that would probably, that you don't do quite as well, you wouldn't be doing. But yet, because it's pro wrestling, we we can get away with it. And so, just because you can get away with it doesn't mean you should get away with it. And I think that that's where pro wrestling has kind of gotten off track, in that, styles, the clash of styles, or the way that styles kind of mesh together, are what make it interesting. Um, and I think we've lost a little bit of that. I think, what makes a match with Bam Bam Bigelow, these are the only names that are coming to mind, and Ricochet interesting, would be the fact that they're so different. But just because Bam Bam can do a moonsault in a match with Ricochet, he probably shouldn't do it, because his isn't going to look the way Ricochet's does. So I think in that regard, pro wrestling everybody could use a little bit of, like, stay in your lane, asshole. That's what makes it interesting.
Little reality check there, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like, if you're gonna do the MMA thing, like, so I guess, to get back to your original question, if that's the direction we should go in, like, well, fucking train it at least. If that's not what you do, and you're not willing to put that time in to go train Muay Thai, don't throw leg kicks. If you're not willing to put the time in to train jujitsu, like, don't do heel hooks. You're don't fake the funk just because you can fake the funk. I think it hurts the sport.
I always think about that, like certain guys like Ricochet and Osprey, they're such good high flyers, but then people want to copy them. So then they almost get dragged down. So it's the same thing with the MMA guys like
Hmm.
you and Kyle O'Reilly. Like, okay, these guys throw awesome kicks. You could tell
Yeah,
like the submissions are legit, but then other guys
right.
copy you, and then it kind of brings you guys down. I even said
It
that to Jack Evans, like
it
when he's doing all
sucks.
that crazy stuff and they start copying him and they stink at it, and he's doing
Yeah,
630s, it's like they bring him down.
yeah.
Yeah, I hate that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go out, like, I can do a moonsault and I can do a few things, and I'm nobody special for that. But if I'm in a match with Ricochet, why would I do a moonsault? For
Right.
what? He's gonna do 2 rotations, maybe 3. And
Yeah.
even if he only does the same exact move that I did, he's gonna have a certain, um, certain sort of, like, glide to it that's just not going to be there when I do it. So, in the same regard, why would you come into a match with me? Now, if you've trained it, great, let's do it. Like Bryan Danielson and myself, we worked, we put it on each other's legs. Why? Because we both train Muay Thai. So it looked a certain way. But if you don't train Muay Thai and you're in a match with me, why are you going to trade leg kicks with me? Because if I sell your leg kicks and they don't look like mine do, and they're not going to, then we're pretty much telling everyone, hey, this is bullshit, but still give us your money.
Right.
I don't
Right.
know. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I love that Danielson match that you had with him in AEW. That was great stuff because you don't kind of see that guys that can actually do it right and do it in the
Yeah.
psychology matches and everything. That's something I love. And I was talking to Frank Trigg a while back, and he was saying like, "Oh man," he goes, "I've rolled with Danielson before." He goes, "This guy's
Yeah.
legit. Like he's heavy. Like you know what I mean. He knows what he's doing." Joe
Yeah.
Luazon said the same thing. He goes, "This guy's
Yeah.
legit." So like when he starts doing certain styles and things, it looks believable. Oh, why? Because he's trained in it, just like
Yeah.
you have. It is believable. That's why.
Yeah, and just do it. Just put, like, if that's where your interest is, I got no problem with you mixing it into your pro wrestling, but put the reps in, because if you go out and do it on TV and it's the second or third time you've done it on ever, it's gonna look like that. You know, in the same regard, if you've put 10,000 reps in and you go and you do it on TV, it's going to look like that. And, you know, they'll remain nameless, but there are those in pro wrestling who have gone out and like if they were putting the reps in, I don't know where the fuck they were putting them in, but they still to this day will throw head kicks and different things. And it's like, I can't even call that martial arts. I don't know what to call it. But like my stepdaughter who's 9 and has never trained a day in her life would throw a better head kick than some of these people.
Yeah, it's not pretty, and then the slapping of the leg, like, obviously
Ugh,
slapping the leg, right? You gotta hate that.
it makes me sick. It really makes me wanna get sick, especially when people do it on a leg kick. Because if you know anything about leg kicks, the ones that hurt the worst are the ones that don't make noise.
Right?
Those are the ones when the shin has really just dug almost down to the bone.
For sure. The thing is, I don't know, some of the guys, they don't quite get the psychology behind it, but I guess they just wanna hear the sound or have some sort of pop.
It I mean, I get it back in the day when, Christopher Adams would throw the super kick and then Shawn Michaels, um, you know, with Sweet Chin Music and the slap and, you know, I get it, but, like a lot of other things, especially in pro wrestling, like, too much of a good thing can be just that. And slapping was one of those for sure. But to see them on leg kicks, I think because I take so much pride in just throwing proper leg kicks, it it just God, it drives me nuts. Because if you understood anything about it, if you even took 5 minutes to understand the actual art, you would know that slapping your leg defeats the purpose of doing it, of having it in your arsenal. Like if it makes that loud of a noise, and it's not what you're looking for.
I've always seen a couple guys do, like, a spinning back fist, but they'll, like, slap their leg or, like, and I was like, "Ah, that's even
Yeah,
weird too." Like, it kinda doesn't make sense. So I guess they're going for that immediate, like, "Oh," or that immediate, like, pop from the crowd, but it doesn't really fit or doesn't make sense.
I think pro wrestling fans have been conditioned to react to sound, and so and again, it's been overdone. And guys, some people I think they get to a point where they can't not slap something, and I don't want to get into the tricks of the trade because there's a lot of slaps that go on in pro wrestling, but it's overdone for sure.
Oh, big time. Just going back to the Danielson and AEW stuff, like, when you guys have that match, like, is the agent or whoever that may be, are they kinda telling you to do that style, or you guys have the freedom to, like, "This is what we wanna do, this is what we're doing?"
Brian and I, it had been years since we had a match, but we had a match years and years ago on the independents, before both of us went to WWE. That was very MMA influenced before MMA. Like, I think this was probably before the UFC had really become what it is today, but it was getting there. And I think all these years, I know for myself, I had wanted to build on that match because from then to now, it might have been like 8 or 10 years. And in that time, I feel like I've learned to do this style so much better. And I would have to imagine Brian feels the same. So to be able to do that in AEW, and they pretty much let Brian and I put that together. I don't remember who our agent was. I think it was Dean, and Dean's awesome, and Dean, really just gave us like freedom, which was exactly what we were looking for and exactly what we needed because we both know what we do. And we also know how what each of us does fits together. And obviously, Dean was able to sit in and give us a direction here or a tip there that made it, that took it from an 8 to a 10. Um, but for the most part, like, yeah, Brian and I had a lot of freedom with that one.
With AEW just in general, is it more freedom per se? Like you don't have to have scripted promos and the matches have more freedom, but just that's always like the buzz about it. It's like, oh, it's not confined or constrained. Maybe WB with too much structure almost.
There's definitely less production, definitely less producing. Um, and I think sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes it's a bad thing. Um, and all points in between, there's it's also very easy to armchair quarterback, but having been in both systems, I think in the middle somewhere is perfect, and we're not always there, whether it's WWE or AEW.
What do you think about Tony? Tony Khan. Like so many people saying they love him, no stress. He's very relaxed. Like I was just talking to
Mhm.
Jack Evans. He's like, I love the guy. He's so easy to deal with. Easy experience with Tony.
For the most part, yeah. I mean, Tony's a good dude. He's passionate about his show. He uh, he wants he wants it to be successful, and that's the first step for anybody in that position. That's what you need.
Oh, absolutely. What's kind of the latest? Because you guys aren't going to be in the trios tournament, I guess, because I saw the bracket. It's just because Adam, I guess, is injured, and maybe Kyle might be injured as well.
Yeah, we weren't gonna be able to do it, all three of us, at the time that we needed to be. So it just plans had to be shifted, much like everything in pro wrestling. It's all subject to change. So this, unfortunately, was one of those things that became subject to change.
To me, the thing is with AEW, they have so many wrestlers. Might be like their only downfall is like people always say, "Ah, TV time. There's not enough TV time. There's not enough hours." WWE might have
Yeah.
7 or 8 hours of TV. The AEW only has three plus dark and elevation. Do you think that might be just not a problem, but it's almost like the guys are fighting for TV time, and guys like you should be on TV almost every week, or FTR or whatever. You guys should be on TV wrestling all the time.
Well, yeah, I think that there are some people who I think in general fans need to be able to invest in the characters. But there are some people that you really need that, like, extra investment with, and I think some of the people you just named are those kind of people. You want to see them every week, and I think, like when the four of us were running and gunning hard as a unit, like, we were all over. At that time, it was NXT. We were all over NXT TV, and um, because of it, being the four of us, like, it was able to be all over without being stale. And I think there are other performers that are like that, like, I don't know, fans don't get sick of seeing every week. And those people should be on TV every week. And when the roster is as large as this one, that's not always the case. So I don't know. I mean, I guess it's the growing pains of a company, and maybe that's something that gets figured out, and maybe it's not, or maybe more hours of TV get added or less. I mean, it's above my pay grade, so all I do is, when I do get an opportunity, I love being in the ring still, um, and so I just try to enjoy it.
Because when they signed you, fresh off obviously the NXT release, but then at MLW had some good matches there. I was there live for a great one against David Richards.
Yeah.
But like like they signed it. It's like, okay, here we go. Sammy Guevara. Okay, he lost, but obviously he's getting some TV time. But then they put Red Dragon together, so I'm like, okay, here we go.
Hmm.
Awesome tag team. Love them from Ring of Honor. Here
Yeah.
we go. But then it's like, and I guess maybe injuries and other things. But it was almost like not start and stop. But it was like, oh man, let's do something with these guys. Red Dragon is great. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
let's pump up the tag division. I don't know if you had like that same feeling. It's almost like you're running and then you have to jog a little bit.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm not going to mince words here. We are great. And I was super excited about the thought of being able to get back in there with Kyle. And I mean, we have a long history with the Bucks from New Japan. We have other people from New Japan that we ran hard with over the years. Rocky Romero, Trent Beretta, different people. God, even Matt Seidel. We were in some of these. I think there was he was tagging with Ricochet at one time when we were with New Japan. Anyway, just a bunch. And then even the idea of like Ring of Honor and the Briscoes and FTR, and there were so many tag teams that I was chomping at the bit for us to be able to mix it up with. So much so that I thought, like, man, we could do a Crockett Cup pay per view or something like that. And I
Yeah.
think people would be over the moon for it just because tag team wrestling is such a different thing. We've got, this generation's version of the Midnight Express, of the Four Horsemen or the Brainbusters, whatever you want to call it, of um, the Rock and Roll Express, of the Fantastics, of the Freebirds, of the Road Warriors. You've got all of this in a slightly different, twisted way that, like, I thought, man, this is just money waiting to be made. And yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed that that hasn't happened.
Yeah, to me, it's like, oh my god, look at the tag division. And when you
Yeah,
guys recently turned on the Bucks, I'm like, okay, here we go. Even
yeah,
if you did like a best of seven or something, you know what I mean? Like the old Benoit Booker T thing, like that would be awesome because you guys had some matches, like you said, in New Japan, but ROH. I
yes,
remember being at the Hammerstein. You guys literally tore the
yeah,
place down in a show that was kind of centered around the Bullet Club and Okada. You guys
yeah,
like kind of turned the the
yeah.
place upside down.
We did it in New Japan and Ring of Honor for a couple years running, and I think it was the similarities between us and the Bucks, but then what really made it pop was the difference. Like, we're so opposite of one another that there almost shouldn't be chemistry, but the chemistry it's gross how good the chemistry is with us. So yeah, if the trigger doesn't get pulled on that, like, you've left money on the table, because we could go a full year, if not longer, feuding with the Bucks, and I guarantee you, because we did it in Ring of Honor in New Japan and nobody got sick of it, it'd be the same thing now. We're that much better, and they're that much better than we were then. I mean, we were still figuring some of that shit out at that time, and now it's like riding a bike. Even when we turned on them, like, it just the bit that we did in ring, it feels like, oh man, I know how to do this. Like, I could sleep my way through this.
To me, which is true, you're right. Like these guys shouldn't have chemistry. Like these tough MMA kickboxing kind of centric. I know Kyle's more like BJJ, but like that
Mhm.
kind of guys against probably one of the best high flying tag teams we've seen
Yeah.
in many years. Probably
Yep.
maybe you could put them up there ever. Like they're just really good high flyers. It's just like
Yeah.
wow, they're so much different. But when you guys come together, chemistry is awesome.
Yeah. It is awesome, and it's been there from the beginning. And New Japan Ring of Honor at the time were smart enough to take advantage of it and to benefit from it.
It was great because you throw in, like, the Time Splitters too, or, like, Roppongi Vice,
Sure.
or if it was the Hooligans, it was
Yeah.
always like, wow, like, what like, even if it's starting off, Wrestle Kingdom or, whatever show, it's like, "Wow, this is great." Like, this is,
Yeah.
Like you said, you almost never get old of it, tired or old of it.
No, and it was all like-minded guys who could go out and do it in a way that put business first. Business always came first, and I can't say that for everyone I've been involved with, you know. But those everybody you just named, especially Matt and Nick and myself and Kyle, business always comes first. It's just the way it is.
What do you think is going to be like? Not next, but like the Undisputed Elite. Obviously, they break up. Is it just kind of like let's get healthy first, as far as like Adam Cole and then put the trio together, or it's like a Red Dragon is ready right now. You and Kyle are ready. Let's do this thing. You know,
I think right now, like I'm the only one that's
fully
fully
healthy.
healthy. Yeah. So I think it's just a matter of the boys getting getting back, and it won't be long. But I think that's kind of where we are at the moment. It's just giving the boys a little time to heal, and then we'll get this thing going again.
Trying to remember, did you guys ever wrestle FTR like at NXT or anything, or never
We
really
did.
cross paths? Oh, you did. Okay,
Yeah, we wrestled FTR. We It was Kyle and I. It was the Undisputed Era. They were the Revival at the time. We wrestled one time on NXT TV, and man, it was a good one. It was a really good one. I remember uh, just really enjoying it. Um, I think that can be said for all four. And then fans enjoyed it as well. And again, it was chemistry. That was the first time. I mean, we had jumped them on SmackDown, but that was the only other time that we had touched prior to that. And it was, I'll say it, it was instant chemistry. Um, Probably a little bit more similar than opposites, but in different ways. They don't do it with the martial arts thing. Obviously, they're just more classic pro wrestlers. But I think again, it's styles, and like if you have one team or one individual that sticks to a particular style, and then the other one does the same, it just makes it more interesting. It's like playing an arcade game of Street Fighter or something. Like how does Ryu, beat Chun Li? Like, it becomes that. And I think that's what pro wrestling. That's the advantage pro wrestling has over MMA. And I love MMA. I mean, I'll watch it 7 days a week. But I think the advantage is that MMA, it's evolved to a point now where like you have to be able to do everything. It's not like the early UFCs when a guy would wear one boxing glove and Hoist Gracie was out there in his gi choking people to death. Like it's a different thing now. But pro wrestling, we can still kind of play a little bit with that, with the elements, make it a little bit more styles clash. No pun intended.
right. It feels like FTR Red Dragon should cross paths too, because it's like
Oh fuck
and
yeah.
Briscoes again, but like FTR definitely.
Hmm.
They're I mean super hot right now. IWGP Tag Champs, AAA Tag Champs, ROH Tag Champs. I mean that's got to happen too.
For sure. I mean, I'm dying to kick both of those guys. I I don't know. I think a little bit of animosity. Um, it's a good thing in this business, and we have that with them. There's competitive. I mean, dare I say we have it a little bit with the Bucks. Like we're all friendly, but there's an element of like, well, fuck you. We're better than you, and that goes with FTR too. And I think that's another thing that is missing from pro wrestling these days, because you can feel it in the room. You can feel a vibe when things aren't exactly copacetic. And I think fans can feel that. And I think you can even feel it through the TV screen. Um, and there's been more times that tempers have flared with us and FTR to where, there was a chance of us getting into it backstage than not. And again, that's money. Like, don't leave the money on the table. The money is there. Because we're all four of us are professional enough to hopefully not get there. But man, it's palpable when the potential for it to be there is there, and it's there with them and us. I mean, I honestly, like, I don't think any of the four of us care for one another all that much.
Could be a good thing, right?
That's
For
what I'm
business.
saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's business, and at the end of the day, it's business. What is best for business? That's why the Bucks and us were so successful. I mean, truth be told, especially when they first put us together, like, kind of didn't fucking like them. I don't know how much we respected them. I'm pretty sure they didn't respect us. Um, but I don't know. There's an understanding. Business comes first. Um, but there's no reason why you can't punch your friends in the face.
Very true. Now you're saying best for business, and you're saying that kind of analogy where like you don't really have to like the guys, palpable in the back. Sounds
Right.
like something Triple H has said many times about him and The Rock, and him and Steve Austin, and Steve Austin and The
Sure.
Rock. Like those guys didn't really like each other. Shockingly to everyone else, like they're fighting for the position. They really didn't get
Hmm.
along backstage, but in the ring, they had great chemistry. All those guys.
Right. And that's where, that's where I think this business gets really dirty is you've got a lot of people love to talk out of both sides of their mouth, and you got a lot of people, and unfortunately some of these people are in high positions, or just happen to be successful wherever they go, but they do it the same way, and they backstage politic their asses off, and they shit talk people, and they get people fired, and they do it's just dirty. And the real competition in pro wrestling exists in the locker room. And there's guys that are afraid of losing their spot to the guy that they see coming because they know, like, oh shit, that guy's way more athletic than I am, or he's a way better martial artist than I am, or he's a way better gymnast than I am, and those same mother effers will undercut those guys. And yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you got to be in the business to kind of know who those people are, but they're there. They are certainly there.
When you were working with Triple H and at NXT, you get along with him great? Because it seemed like for a while, like WWE wasn't bringing in guys from the indie scene. Then all of a sudden, Triple
Hmm.
H is in NXT, and he's bringing in indie darlings. He's bringing in good
Yeah,
wrestlers. He's bringing in different guys of all shapes and sizes. Did you get
yeah,
along with Triple H? And did you were you almost surprised that they wanted NXT, because it's usually, oh, WWE, you got to land of the Giants, or, oh, we don't want
yeah,
to sign indie guys. Like you've heard that a million
yeah,
times from WWE.
yeah. I grew up, watching Hunter. So I was a fan, but was not sure getting brought in how that was going to go. And I do remember the first time I was at NXT, he gave the post show talk to the group. I remember it was at Full Sail, and he laid out some things and the vision and the way that he saw certain things, et cetera, et cetera. And by the time he was done talking, and I don't know if it was, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, but by the time he was done talking, I just remember thinking to myself, like, as a pro wrestling fan, pro wrestling guy, pro wrestler, except whatever you want to call it, like, if you could listen to that speech and not support this guy, like, I could lose my number. We can't be friends because the way that he saw the whole thing was just awesome. And it was like, man, this guy really, one, I'm a fan of the way he sees the business. But two, like he really wants the business itself to thrive and to go to um, have uncharted success. Um, and then after being there with him for the better part of 3 or 4 years or whatever, and being the undisputed era and going through the war games and all that stuff, I would um, I would go to war for that man. I would, hands down. If he tells me like, listen, I need you to run through that wall, I'm gonna try. If he tells me he thinks I can do it, like, all right, I will try.
Seems like such a shift with Triple H because me being a fan, got him 40, but being a fan forever and knowing him at a
Mm,
certain point, it's like, man, he's burying guys. This is obviously during his career. It's like, oh, he shouldn't be in this spot, or
hmm
he's kind of holding this guy down. But now it's like completely different. It's like Dad Triple H, where he's like mentoring
hmm
guys. Obviously, he knows everything about production. He knows everything about creative. He's
hmm
been Vince's like protege. So it seems like a complete flip where so many people are like, oh, he's like our dad, or this is like a completely
Sure.
different Triple H than we might be used to like me years ago as a fan. Completely
Yeah.
different guy.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I only know the guy that I worked under. And I know that, again, I would go to war for the man. And you wouldn't have to ask me more than once.
Seems like he had his thing with NXT, and obviously he had a heart issue and kind of moved around. But like when you were in NXT, you guys were such a big part of the show. Like you said, for 3 or 4 years, a part of all the war games. Did you kind of think like that was a great spot to be in NXT, or did you kind of aspire to be on the WWE roster during that time?
I think I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I think we were all, I'll say for myself, I was really happy working for Hunter. And if that was going to be on NXT, I was cool with it staying there. If he was going to go to Raw, I would have wanted to go to Raw. Like I liked working for Hunter. I never worked directly for Vince, I guess. Like I mean, I met the man and we were up there a few different times and he was nothing but, nice to me. So again, I have no ill will or bad things to say or anything, but I never felt like I wasn't working for Hunter. And Hunter was always the guy that he was always, I'll use the word coach only because I grew up playing football. So like uh, I wanted to play well for myself and for my father to be proud of me, but I also had certain coaches that I wanted them to be proud of me, and I felt that same sort of thing from Hunter, even from Shawn Michaels. It was the same kind of thing. Like I wanted to come back through the curtain and have them be like, "Yeah, you goddamn fucking right," you know, like hell yeah. And it was the same sort of thing. So it was cool. I mean, that's a space that I'm comfortable in and a space that I know. And that feels like home.
And it's great too because with Triple H, obviously with Shawn Michaels, they know what it's like to be at the top of the mountain. So they
hmm
can be great in that aspect where they're kind of teaching you this, but then they know other stuff too. And then they can give you kind of, like you said, some coaching, but maybe even a pat on the back and say, like, oh, that was great. I like this or I didn't like that. So, I mean, it's pretty impressive just to have that system, but have Triple H and Michaels be on top of it because sometimes you'll have a system or you'll have training and the guy maybe wasn't it
Sure.
kinda doesn't matter if he wasn't at the top, but it's like the guy didn't make it, but he's training
hmm
wrestlers or like it just seemed like Triple H and Michaels is like a great selling point, but they actually do coach the hell out of you, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, funny story for the first like 2 weeks of sitting in film study with Sean, I had to keep reminding myself to pay attention to these little pearls of wisdom that he was dropping because I would get caught up in the fact that like I'd be like, oh, that's fucking Shawn Michaels. That's Shawn Michaels. And then I wouldn't be hearing what the man was saying. And it was like, Jesus, asshole, like get your shit together. But we'll say that was about 2 weeks.
That's great. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. I should be learning from this guy.
Yes.
Instead of saying like, oh,
Yes.
this match was great, that match was great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
With him, it seems like he's got a firm grasp, but I don't like an outsider looking in. It's like, oh, would he be a great coach? He is though. He's like as far as like you said, dropping wisdom, but like he's great as far as like Michael Jordan. He'd be a horrible coach because sometimes
Yeah.
you're a good player, but you can't tell the guy what to do because you can't explain like
Yeah.
oh, I'm great, but I can't explain it. Like some guys aren't great coaches, but we're great players.
I know exactly what you're saying because I played football in college and I'd like to think of myself as a good football player. But then the year after I was done playing, I went back to coach thinking like, oh, well, naturally, I love football. And what I realized was I love playing football. And that's what it came down to. But as it translates to pro wrestling, for sure, Hunter and Shawn are great at passing it on.
Because when I played football too, it's like I had this one coach who was good when he played, but it's like, yeah,
Mhm.
he's not really that great of a coach. And like what he's teaching us is like this is so basic, and like you could tell
Yeah.
he can't explain how he
Yes.
did what he did, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. I was kind of that way. I played defense. I played linebacker, and I went back and was coaching running backs. And I had played running back when I was like a kid growing up, but even that, like, there were so many times that I just wanted to take the guy's helmet off and put it on and go, no, you fucking do it like this.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, that's when I realized, like, oh, I loved playing football. I don't really love football. And the confirmation of that was that, like, at this point in my life, I couldn't name 10 guys in the NFL right now. Like, I don't watch any
Wow.
football. I don't even watch the Super Bowl. Just
Damn. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
I don't
crazy.
know.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
I guess
yeah.
you would not be going to be good for fantasy football then, I guess.
No, I think what I realized was that like most of the football I watched growing up, like I was studying, I guess. I don't know. Cuz now like I'll watch some pro wrestling, but what I watch more than anything is MMA, and it's because of the martial arts since I was a kid, but I think part of that too is because I try to put so much martial arts into my pro wrestling. So again, I guess maybe I'm studying.
True. It's like Belichick. He was a pretty not bad football player, but he wasn't really that good. But he's like a hell of a coach. He can
Yeah.
explain it a lot better than he could do it.
Yeah. I think there's a decent amount of that both ways, players that aren't good coaches and coaches that weren't good players and etc. Like I think a lot of times they end up like the backup quarterbacks. There was a trend there for a while that
Yep.
they were making good coaches.
Yep.
So it was the guys that were in the film study and all that stuff, but weren't necessarily the guys out there doing it on the field.
Definitely. Just curious though. I know MMA is big. Did you ever think about becoming a full time MMA fighter?
I fought kickboxing. I did. I had 3 amateur kickboxing fights. Um, and MMA wasn't quite what it is today at that time. Um, I want, like, yeah, I like competing. If it was, if there was a crossover point for me where pro wrestling, I was just starting to gain such, like, to where it was like, well, shit, I think I can make a living doing this. And that was when I think I would have been more tempted to switch over. Not switch over because it's not like you can't do both, but like take that a little bit more seriously. And I was getting so busy with pro wrestling and the money was there. And it was like, and it was almost a non decision. It was like, I was probably in my 30s and to do a complete career switch would have been crazy at the time, especially,
Yep.
I had 2 kids and was struggling to make ends meet anyway. So then I had this thing like when Ring of Honor and New Japan start becoming a thing where it's like, okay, well, wait, I can get, paid beyond per appearance. Like I don't get paid just to come out and do it. Like I get a salary. Um, so I think that kind of extinguished any real thoughts about. I think I would have been like a decade off. Would have been about 10 years prior if I had started training for just MMA. I do think that that's probably an avenue I would have gone because I was probably more accustomed to competition than like it took me a good long time to get used to what pro wrestling is. And if I'm being honest, still today, like that competitive itch, um, I miss it. I miss that. I miss because when with pro wrestling, there's so much performance to it that it's a it's a mix between the two, but it's you're spinning a bunch of plates. Where when you go out and compete, it's just no, I'm out here to fucking hurt you if I have to. Like I'm here to beat you, and that doesn't necessarily mean like beat you bloody, but if it does mean that, like I'm willing to go there. So that's a different sort of single-minded purpose that I think I just growing up was so used to because I played contact sports, just football, lacrosse, and kickboxing, and so again, that's a comfortable place for me.
As we wind it down, we head towards the finish here. Got to ask you this random ass question. Did you or did you not save a Ring of Honor show in about, God, it had to be in the mid 2000s, maybe a little bit sooner, because the ring collapsed, the ring broke, and you had to reattach the ring and save it? I think it was before the Trios show. Is that in fact true? I think DeVito said it. I think Credible said it. A bunch of people told me that Jerk Jackson saved the show.
I don't know.
I don't know if you remember that or not. Somebody in the pre-show or
No,
something broke the ring, and like DeVito's guys had to go and like kind of fix the
I'm
ring, basically. Like
remembering
the post broke.
something. I'm remembering something along these lines. If it was DeVito's guys, there were a few of us. It would have
Yeah,
included Massive and Cheech
yeah.
and um, it. So if I'm getting credit for it, I don't. I want to choose my words wisely because I don't want to do anything to destroy the mystique here. But my wife will tell you when it comes to mechanic work. Um, I I could be better. I have put up a couple fans. There's one. Let me see. I don't know if you can see that fan there.
Nice, beautiful. Great job.
Yes,
Great
I
work.
put that. I put that fan up. But that's about as mechanically inclined as I get. So if there was really somebody saving that show, could have been DeVito's guys. Yeah, let's just scratch all of that. Yes, I saved the show.
Yeah.
I saved the
Perfect. Great.
show.
Great
Of
answer.
course I did. I'm
Thank you for
probably
giving
the
it.
only reason that Ring of Honor still exists to this day. So Tony Khan should be kissing my ass because he got
That's
to
right.
buy Ring of Honor because of me.
That's right. Damn right. Now,
Yes.
next, obviously, we're saying get everybody healthy. You got the Young Bucks, you got FTR, maybe
Yeah.
Briscoes. If you go to
I
Ring of
would
Honor, maybe the
love.
Briscoes, right?
Ooh,
All
I
the
would
above.
love to get in there with Mark and Jay again. Man, that would we had some great ones with them. And again, just another team with like the chemistry just gross. And I know for a fact, without even having wrestled them for God knows how many years at this point, Kyle and I would get in the ring with Mark and Jay. It it'd be we wouldn't miss a step. We would not miss a step. I know it.
What else is next for you? Now, obviously, the podcast, right?
Yeah, yeah. The podcast we're gonna get moving on that. And I'm just trying to wrestle. I'd like to do some more wrestling, and I like to be active, and I like I still enjoy the time I get to spend in the ring. So I want to get as much of that in as I can. Um, I enjoy that so much so that like I'm actually thinking about maybe taking a kickboxing fight too. So that'll
Ooh,
be amateur and just but again, it's just that I don't know. I've felt this way since I was a kid. Like I express myself physically most easily. So when I feel stress or any like I just that's how I get it out. So I think those are the things that I have on the horizon, but we'll see.
nice. Now, where can everybody follow you? You know, social media and otherwise.
I'm on Twitter. I am on Instagram, the Bobby Fish on both of those, I believe. I don't know who has Bobby Fish, but somebody. Um, and then the podcast, the Undisputed podcast, will be coming at you. And that one, we are looking to really set the world ablaze.
Nice. Awesome stuff,
Yeah.
Bobby. Thank you so much for all the time tonight. Really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.